Holy crap, I got a Beast Wars figure for my birthday! Waspinator happy. You know, maybe I should start a collection of the Beast Wars figures because I just love these characters so much and I can easily afford where did it all come from? I gotta do something about this. I need an excuse as to why I'm blowing my money on all of these robots. I know! I'll review them and a lot of the other random junk that clutters my house. It'll be great. No one has ever thought of that. Go away! Shoot! Shoot! Over the course of the past few months, I've collected a figure of almost every main character in Beast Wars. Not including alternate forms or Dinobot 2, because that's just a repaint, or Tigerhawk, because that plot was stupid.
We are literally two n***s.
Some of them are from the original lines, but most of them come from the Legacy and War for Cybertron lines. And for the most part, they look phenomenal. They went out and did their very best to accurately portray the characters from the cartoon, while still being immensely posable and fun to mess with. But unfortunately, there's always that one straggler. Like, if your parents got the cereal variety pack and it has plenty of wonderful cereal, but then there's like original Cheerios just lurking in there, and of course your siblings took the good stuff, leaving you just with original Cheerios, and who the hell likes the original Cheerios? They taste like dirt. Mom! She took all the Lucky Charms! Mom! Mom! What I'm saying is that War for Cybertron Rhinox is the original Cheerios for the line. Now, on first glance, WFC Rhinox does not seem all that bad. In fact, it seems pretty good. If you saw the original Amazon listing, you probably thought, hot dang, it's the boy! But once you hold it in your hands and stare right into his tiny translucent eyes, you see the problems arise. Let's start off with the question my grandmother asked my sister's boyfriend. Why are you that color? Seriously, why of all the colors did they choose this baby barf green plastic? Just a quick comparison, here's the Amazon listing with a metallic green plastic, which would make sense for how he looks in the show, but instead we get this. I'm fairly certain there are laws against false advertising. But okay, so the color of plastic ain't right. At least it's accurate to the show, right? Well, sure, aside from his lack of spikes, the Rhino had its mouth being closed, he's missing the Maximal insignias on his head, and he has this weird flat tray table chest that he can use to hold up a miniature CRT TV for the other Transformers to watch. But those I could tolerate at least. What the heck happened to his guns? They're so tiny! Those aren't chain guns. Those are hair dryers he can use at a salon.
I'm telling you, girlfriend, you need to dump his ass and get yourself a real man.
At least they can be stored on his back for weapon storage. That's always nice. Well, dang, girl! What you got going on back there? Look at the sheer amount of kibble going on. And the thing is, sometimes kibble isn't much of a problem. Some things people would call kibble feels more so like they're trying to spice up a figure's design, to give them an armor look, some kind of weaponry. Here though, I think the only reason it's there is to add some much needed girth to Rhinox, because otherwise he's bizarrely thin for such a bulky character. But hey, at least his arms are meaty. Let's do an action pose. Where did your biceps go, Rhinox? Seriously, there's nothing there? His arms are on a hinge on his shoulder joint. Despite technically being fully articulated, you can't put his arms too far out, otherwise it looks absolutely weird. Not that you could, because of all this stupid plating getting in the way. Oh, and speaking of his legs, that's the worst part of his transformation. The rest of it is pretty simple, but they absolutely needlessly complicated his legs. You have to basically take out legs inside of his legs, which wouldn't be so bad, but the plating gets caught on each other constantly, causing bits to get stuck, other bits to ping off, and it feels like it's gonna break. And you have to shove his gun up his ass in order to store it, which itself barely fits in. Lovely. At least the Rhino looks fine. It's basically a brick. It feels like one of those Rhino figures you get at a museum gift shop, but it's a Rhino. Yay. Overall, I'd give this figure 2 Rhino farts out of 5. Overall, a disappointing entry into the WFC figure line, and a real shame. The plastic is reasonable quality, and on first glance, it looks the part, but the more you look at it, the worse it gets. A bit like your mum. But hey, it's a Rhinox figure, and it does complete the collection at least. Oh wait, there's Thrilling 30 Rhinox. That just fell. That was not intentional. Which basically fixes every problem with that figure. It's even the same size, so it fits in perfectly with the WFC figures. And with his Gatling gun set spin, Rhinox can still continue his career as a hairstylist. Hasbro probably could have saved money and sold more figures if they were lazy and reused that figure than do this one. Only one thing to do now. Hey Lunar, I got a present for you. Hey look everyone, it's the mascot of Transformers. Don't you mean Optimus Prime? No, I mean the actual mascot of Transformers. Classics Deluxe Bumblebee comes from an innocent time in Transformers. In 2006, there wasn't a lot going on. Cybertron had wrapped up, the movie and its toy line were a year away. There was no big line at the time. All you really had were 10th anniversary Beast Wars figures, which were cool, but were never going to be big shelf pushers. You had a couple of alternators, which weren't exactly flying off the shelves. And then you had Titanium, which will be for another day. You had something more interesting going on in Japan, in the worst possible way, but otherwise it was pretty barren, and with the movie's delay, Hasbro needed a quick placeholder, which is where Transformers Classics came in. It was pretty novel at the time, a line dedicated to reimaginings of G1 era figures. Not that Hasbro hadn't done reimagining of G1 toys, after all, G2 was a thing. But this felt more akin to an update of the G1 toys, with little gimmickry in their features, a return to much smaller sizes after the chonksters that were the Unicron trilogy toys, bright 80s neon paint jobs, it was all here, and it was pretty cool. Nowadays we are swinging in way too much G1 revivals, quite frankly. Like, do we really need basically the same Optimus Prime released 3 times in War for Cybertron? Oh wait, this one has battle damage. Take my money! But here, nah man, it was the 20th anniversary. The 20-year nostalgia rule was setting in and Classics Bumblebee is ready to party. Now, heads up, he is missing a lot of stuff. He's missing his jet ski that turns into a jetpack like he used all the time in the cartoon. And he has no weapons, but I can improvise. Perfect. But honestly, that all doesn't matter because just glancing at him, this is instant charm. Old Bumble Benito couldn't be more 80s if he tried. The simple but cute features, the less detailed but still distinct parts, he's just cute. There's no other way to put it. I just want to pet this little Bumblebee. Look at that little smile. Little dude knows how cute he is. That is a man that knows he gets all the girls. Yeah, he's got a bit of junk in the quite literal trunk, but it doesn't throw off his weight, and it doesn't ruin the front view either. Even his arm doors, which do stick out quite a bit, are thankfully manageable. The arms utilize ball joints to get some really nice movement. Even his head is on a ball joint, meaning he can nod agreeingly while a friend is giving political opinions he's not in the mood to argue with. Leg articulation isn't as good, sadly, as while it has alright maneuverability, you can't rotate the whole leg around much. There's also no ankle pivot, not that he could with all this car in his legs. And due to the plastic bits on his knees, he can't even bend over and shake that bumble butt. Okay, so the robot mode is very cool and all, but you can't just have a cool robot. It's gotta have a nice alt mode too. Well, after a transformation so simple, I immediately got without even thinking. It turns into this adorable cross between a Honda Civic and a Subaru Impreza. No, the puns won't stop. This is the best kind of throwback. It gets what makes the G1 toys still a little desirable. A lot of the old Diaclone figures would have nice little details in them to make them more than just a car shell with robot organ. You not only got translucent headlights, but you even got seats. Find a figure small enough and you can have your own sandwich. There are still some other problems, some of them coming from the Classics line in general, such as the fact that almost all of them are in deluxe scale. It's not so bad with other figures, he's relatively in scale with other deluxe figures such as Thrillin' 30 Deluxe or Legacy Deluxe. But with the Grimlock from the same line, it's a little distracting. Also, why are his stripes white? They should be black. He is a bee, a busy, buzzing bumblebee. But overall, I still give this figure 4.25 out of 5 Bumblebats. It's very charming, easy to transform, or overall, just a nice figure. It's also so easy to transform that it could be a great way to get someone into collecting Transformers. The leg issues do hurt it a bit, but not enough to ruin my enjoyment. It's also just funny to me that this was the last Bumblebee that came out before the live-action movie, and resulted in Bumblebee's promotion and Optimus Prime sometimes being regulated to the Bumblebee list.
Come on. Stop it. Stop pinging off. Come on, Bumblebee. And
Hey, Starscream! Stop slouching there. Fix your posture. Oh. Armada was an interesting time for Transformers. And depending on who you talk to, it was either ridiculously fun or ridiculously awful. After Beast Machines flopped, Robots in Disguise proved to be a surprise success story, what with its more back-to-basics story, throwbacks to old toys, its anime aesthetic, and more. So Hasbro opted to do a complete reboot of Transformers, a fresh start. And they were going all in with not just fresh takes on old characters, and new characters that were reworking of old characters because Hasbro allegedly lost the rights at the time. The toys followed suit, being larger size than anything that came before, and with this new approach came new gimmick. Now, when I'm talking gimmicks, I'm talking about special actions and features that do something big overall to the toy. Stuff like light piping or wheels are so integral to the design of a Transformer and so impactless to the overall toy, I don't consider those real gimmicks. No, what I'm talking about is the stuff that requires NASA-level engineering to pull off. I'm talking sounds, spring-loaded projectiles, built-in shivs, things going into things, combining, whatever the hell this is. When done right, a big gimmick can really add to a toy's value, and me personally, I always get excited when I see a well-executed gimmick. They could take a Transformer from something that just looks nice on the shelf to something where I just want to take them off the shelf and fiddle them. But there are plenty of times when the gimmicks go too far for a figure, much like whatever happened to Sideswipe here.
Sweet liberty, my arm!
And here we have Starscream. He serves as a perfect amalgamation of everything that makes Armada and its gimmicks awesome, and everything awful too. On visuals alone, Starscream is quite impressive, dwarfing many other figures that came before, and he's not even the third largest size class. Like the rest of the Armada era figures, he has a bright and multicolored paint scheme, with bright reds, neon yellows, and lots of light gray for arms and feet. He's a pretty solid representation of the anime character, with the only major difference being the cockpit window color. And that face, that cheeky grin, that smile that says, "Yeah, I'll be the thing everyone loves about this show. I'm the one who will get all the re-releases and references to my story arc." And if there's anything the Armada era got right, it's the feel of the toys. They feel very durable in the hand, like they can take a beating. Which, given these are children's toys, let's not kid ourselves, you do want them to take a beating from Uncle Junior. Which is certainly more than what I can say compared to the most figures in Beast Machine. But it's one thing to hold a figure, it's time to play with it, and as far as articulation goes, the arms do rotate around 180 degrees, and you can raise his arms a bit vertically, but that's it for the arms. For a sword-using character, he isn't going to do a whole lot of that blocking thing. The legs do go almost 180 degrees, and there are knee joints, and the legs rotate, but he isn't able to do any kind of convincing crouching position. Waist articulation? Forget it. Head articulation? Forget it. You can rotate the wings a bit too, which helps with stability, and of course he can take off his wing like in the show to form a sword. But yeah, not a lot going on with posing, and I know kids as a general rule care more about action features than they do articulation, but it's a shame such a great character is held back so much, especially compared to figures that came before. Oh, I suppose it's better than some other figures that came before. Hey, down, Cheeto, down! Anyhow, let's start rattling off his gimmicks, starting with the mascots of Armada, for better or worse, the Minicons. These little micro machine looking things were the main collectible gimmick of Armada, and while they aren't very articulated, they are rather cute, this little dude being Swindle. You can also use them in conjunction with the Transformers to activate their gimmicks on these Power Links ports. Or some are just for storage, but whatever. Swindle is used for Starscream's main two gimmicks. You can attach him to the bottom of Starscream's fuselage by pressing the cockpit in, drops him like a bomb, and plays a sound effect inside. Unless the wiring is faulty or the batteries are dead, which in that case, good luck getting those stupid button batteries! Yeah, this thing does sound, and it's not just him. Every other MaxCon upwards in size, aside from Unicron and Tidal Wave, have sound playback. And of course, there's the other gimmick that you've probably seen by now. Like the cartoon, you press Swindle in and his missile launchers launch forward with a sound effect. Or of course you could do this with your finger very easily, but shut up, it feels good to do. And these missiles, let me tell you, I'm so glad I got them in Starscream because these things are lethal. Seriously, these things could knock the retina out of a kid's eye. See, this is what Legacy and War for Cybertron figures need. None of these static fart blasts. actual spring-loaded projectiles. Like all the Armada figures, this transformation for Starscream is very simple but satisfying and easily accomplished even without a manual. Also, I quite like how Starscream's head pops back up when transforming him back to robot. It's a simple enough jet with the classic exposed arms underneath, but at least he can cave his hands in so his hands aren't exposed. Unlike some people, it still feels very good in the hand and even has wheels for rolling a little bit. The nose is a little crooked, which is a bit of a shame and was apparently done for safety reasons so little Billy wouldn't get jabbed by Starscream's nose. Instead, the missiles can injure your child. So I talked a lot about the good and the bad of this figure, and the bad aspects are very big problems. So why did I get this figure? Why not Legacy or Thrill in 30? Well, I didn't get Thrill in 30 Starscream because I didn't know it existed at the time. That Legacy figure, quite frankly, I don't think it's all that great. Like, yeah, the articulation is nice and the boosters can go down, but the color scheme is a lot weaker. The missile gimmick without the missiles just feels pointless. And even the face has gone from smug snake to just a generic poo-faced frown, without any hint of smug. Thrilling 30 is better, but honestly still feels kinda off, with the boosters looking absolutely absurd now. And to be honest, I went into Armada wanting all the crazy crap that comes with it. Armada felt like they were really trying to give a kid their money's worth, with all the craziest, goofiest gimmicks you can imagine, with big, chunky, sizable, and strong figures. There is a presence felt of an Armada figure, for better or worse. They immediately stand out, and while sometimes they take things way too far with the clunkiness and gimmickry, they feel like an experience, and it does feel like they try to give each figure their own individual experience. I'm gonna give Starscream 3 3/4 homemade blankets out of 5, though realistically, it probably should be lower. Is it a mess? Yes, but that's why I love it, and it still feels fun to transform and mess with. Do I wish it was more posable? Absolutely, but in a way, it represents all that makes the Armada era just fun. I've got quite a few more, and I'll look at them down the line. I love seeing these wacky gimmicks in action. Anyhow, if you excuse me, this little guy has some Linkin Park A&Bs to be in. You know, I looked at a pretty crazy figure previously. Maybe I should go back to basics. Not that basic! Beast Machine's basic Silverbolt is an infamous figure. One from an already infamous toy line. After the maddening success of Beast Wars with both its TV show and toy line, Beast Machines opted for a much different look and feel. One that wasn't particularly great. I mean, if you like beloved characters turning into quasi-religious zealots, be my guest, though may I suggest not speaking to me. And what the show's quite frankly unique design language that the toys had to follow, it's no surprise that Beast Machines as a toy line was not a success. They had worse quality construction than the Beast Wars toys, had annoying gimmicks, ugly colors, and didn't look anything like the show. Actually, that might be a plus. Anyhow, I'll cover some of those another time, but for now, let's start with Silverbolt here, who's already a bit of a disappointment. Size-wise, he's a basic class figure, and it's the only figure of Silverbolt in the toy line. Surely the basic size class would have made more sense for Rattrap? You know, the literal rodent! In both Wars and Beast Machines, he's a pretty big lad, towering over most of the other cast. But here, he's significantly smaller than Black Arachnia. Though maybe he's okay with that. Okay, but size isn't everything. Most of the Beast Machines figures have weird scaling. And there have been some great basics class or equivalent figures before and since. But even beyond his size, God, he's ugly. Ignoring his god-awful Kung Fu chicken design. What is this color scheme? You have way too much translucent plastic for a lot of the body, a common problem with Beast Machine. And the rest is made up of McDonald's red and yellow plastic. They made the one guy who didn't get a Happy Meal toy look like a Happy Meal toy. And then there's his sword. It's supposed to be like a great big laser sword, but instead looks like he's gonna punish you for the bad girl you've been. Oh, but it doesn't sheath to reveal the most pathetic dagger you've ever seen. How is it that Armada Megatron has an even smaller knife built into him that's more intimidating? It's a shame too, because if you can move past the looks, the articulation is really good. Head, arms, elbows, upper legs, knees, kind of, and even wrists. I'm glad at least the great articulation continued from Beast Wars, even if they didn't follow in other areas. Now then, a transformation. This is the part that Transformers fans know all too well. After a pretty simple if uneventful transformation, you get a pretty mediocre Griffin, which it's nothing special, but gets the job done alright. Except, this is not what he transforms into according to the manual. No, instead, he's supposed to be this. This is supposedly a condor. I'm dead serious. Horrible broken hands masquerading as bird claws. He's even more Happy Meal red than before. The wings aren't even connected. They just float behind his arms. His head is his penis. This is quite frankly embarrassing. It's like a knockoff of a Transformer. The story goes that the change from Griffin to Condor happened last minute, and that's the reason for this awful beast mode. There's even bits like his knees that move about, as if they were supposed to be part of the transformation. But the end result is a robot mode so bad that despite every other Beast era figure being packaged in the Beast or Vehicle mode, Silverbolt was the only one packaged in his robot mode because his alt mode looked so bad. I give it 1.5 cafeteria burgers in hexagonal wrapping paper out of 5. I can say it's at least decently made in terms of plastic quality, and it's articulated well, but it's just such a mess in every other way. I feel like even a kid would be kind of disappointed by this. And now, more than ever, I have a respect for more budget Transformers that still look the part without crippling your wallet. But this thing? Nah, man. The fact that they increased the price for basics figures for this compared to Beast Wars only drives the point home further how much this thing sucks. Especially because, as I mentioned before, this is the only figure of Beast Machine Silverbolt. Meanwhile, Cheetor's Beast Machine design got 3 figures in the line, and 2 more later on. Surely such a great character, such a beloved hero, deserves better than what he got. Oh dear God, those eyes! Nah, I take it back. This figure represents Beast Machines perfectly.
He looks disgusting. Dude, it's like, you know the Xenomorph? It's like if you got the you know the top of the head of the Xenomorph, right?
Yeah.
Imagine getting a frying pan, just violently smushing his face, just clacking it, and it's just his whole face is the top of his head.
Yeah, I'm gonna add your description at the end of the video.
Yeah.
Visuals. Anyways, okay, so
I'm not fingering now.
no, don't do that. That's inappropriate.
Hey look, a non-Transformers related toy. Told you guys I'd do it. Look at how hot she is. Do you think Transformers has ever made something this sexy? Fair point. Darkstalkers. Probably one of the most misunderstood fighting games ever. Just recently I saw some posts online wanting some grounded, dark, and gritty reboot of the game, and it just had me wondering, have you ever even played Darkstalkers? Darkstalkers is crazy, goofy, over the top, and most importantly, fun. It's an absolute delight. And if you don't like it, why don't you take your competitive ass back to Mortal Kombat 1? You broke a $3,000 life over a crap game. And it's funny, while Darkstalkers hasn't gotten a new game in years, Morgan Einsland kinda remains the series mascot, appearing in plenty of other media and merchandise. Like when you think succubuses? Morgan is often the one people will have in mind when designing their own succubus characters. And naturally, with an already popular character, Capcom opted to expand the cast with a sister for the Scottish slag of Satan, with Lilith, her cuter, perkier sister, though still just as demented. Poor Lilith. Despite the popularity of her sister and the cult status of her series, she hasn't gotten a lot of love in the figure scene. There are some smaller ones from back in the day, like this one from Toy Biz, which is kind of charming in a goofy action figure kind of way. There's this one which looks... Look, I'm shameless, but I'm not that shameless.
Vagina.
And there's this adorable one from Pop-Up Parade, but that one came out after this one, so moving on. Kotobukiya are one of the largest figure houses in Japan and have done some incredible work. Immaculate detail, gorgeous colors, poses with a ton of personality, and they've tackled a lot of different franchises, including Transformers. Why did they create Dami Mami Megatronny? I don't have Kotobukiya's Morgan for comparison, just this other one from Capcom's Capcom figure builder range. Great name there, lads, good branding! But it's still roughly the same scale, and her reaction is appropriate, as it looks like she's blown away by the beauty of Lilith. Everything is on point here. The adorable face, the colors, the flat chest, the big butt that her fans all adore her for. It's all here. It's so funny going from Transformers, which even at collector scale tends to have very simple paint jobs and plastic sculpting. Here though, we have different plastic texturing for seemingly every bit of the body, with a smooth, reflective latex-like plastic for her main outfit, textured effect for the wings, and a really nice soft but solid plastic for the rest of the body. I'm seriously impressed at all the little details too, from the little folds on her stocking, the little muscle definitions, and the absolutely perfect paintwork on her eyes. It's a detailed delight of this devilish daring demoness. God, that felt good to say. Articulation-wise... Oh, right. Well... really is just a statue, huh? No articulation here. How about we talk about how well of a representation of the character this is? After all, it's a statue. All it can do is represent the character. It's not like it's gonna have any action features, and honestly, looking at it, I immediately see it and go, boom! Lilith. The colors are all exceptional with lovely gradiated paint effects on the sleeve and leggings, though I will say I'm not as big on the highlighting on her hair. It's a bit too bright, but to be fair, a lot of highlighting on hair can be tricky for a lot of figures. It's supposed to be a light shining down from above, but unless you have a light shining down like that, it looks kinda odd. But it's a minor complaint. And the pose, kind of a standard sexy girl pose, is a pose Lilith does in the game. It's that cute, perky, hello boys kind of pose. Like she's just walked into the room and grabbing attention. Considering how dynamic of a fighting game Darkstalkers is, I would have preferred a more dynamic pose, because, hey, fighting game character. It makes sense to have them have dynamic poses. But I can't act like this isn't still amazing. Even the base is nice and detailed, and fits that light shining down from above kind of effect. Personally, I'll give this figure 5 out of 5, Victor's weird ass attack out of 5. It's a great representation, it's cute as hell, and overall, I just love it. The only thing I need now is a new Darkstalkers game, please? And none of this realism crap. Give me the cartoony Darkstalkers game I deserve, Capcom. Or let SNK handle it. Thrillin' 30 Arcee. Control yourselves, viewer, no matter how much that rear bumper tempts thee. Thrilling 30 was such a great promotion. The Generations line took the idea of the Classics line and expanded it even further beyond, with better sculpting, more sizes, and featuring more characters not just from G1, but now from Beast Era, Unicron Trilogy, G2, movies, and even the comics. And it was nice to see figures of characters you wouldn't first expect. Skyby, Chromia, and Double Dealer aren't the highest on people's figure wish list normally, but this line really upped their appeal. And with this line, we finally got a proper figure of G1 Arcee. Now, just hearing that sounds confusing to some of you, no doubt. Hasn't Arcee been part of the franchise since the movie? Almost everyone else got a toy. Why not her? It's easy to see why Unicron took so long, because he was a big, beefy boy. Well, buckle up as I quickly talk about G1 Arcee's complicated history. There was supposed to be a figure during G1, but all that exists is this not exactly great concept art where she looks like a fertility idol. She was also supposed to be in Headmasters, which was clearly just going to be a reworked Chrome Dome. There was supposed to be one in Action Masters where they wouldn't have had to have worried about the whole transforming aspect, but that never came about. There was also supposed to be an exclusive figure for BotCon 96, but BotCon 96 is a story unto itself. They made a redeco of Black Arachnia in white and pink for Beast Wars, which was neat, but not exactly the same. There was supposed to be one for the Titanium series, which, oh dear god, we dodged a bullet there. Then there's Binaltech, which gave her gender reassignment surgery, which this is the second time this character has been involved in gender reassignment surgery, because there was that whole awful IDW storyline where that happened. Why the hell was that even a thing? Are you so scared of robots with boobs? So, after almost 25 years, we finally get a figure of G1 Arcee that not only looks like her, and is a really good figure. It also has one hell of a dumpy. Look at how immediately charming she is. The pink on white practically screams 80s. We have the modern articulation and stylization that make it feel just marvelous. For the most part, we'll get to that. And that smile. a bright, warm, inviting grin in comparison to the mostly neutral or grouchy faces a lot of Transformers have. It's nice to have one that's just happy to be here. Also, speaking of bright, she probably has the best light piping gimmick I've ever seen on a toy, seemingly absorbing light from any corner of the room. Pretty dang impressive if you ask me. On the back you have this backpack which, alright, let's address this. Arcee is sadly a shell former. What's a shell former? Well, basically it's where most of the exterior bits for the alt mode wrap around the toy more so than actually form part of it. It's a common trade-off with figures that aim to be a bit more slender. Some people are really bothered by them, but for me, it depends. You have some toys which really are just a shell, quite literally in some cases, with lame transformations. But then you have some where the shell bits are styled in such a way that it actually looks quite cool, or they aren't in the way of the toy's articulation. Arcee is given a backpack, but it at least resembles what I imagine a backpack for robots would look like she's on a jaunty trek in the mountains. Also, the articulation is great. The head rotates, the arms are amazingly movable, though no wrist articulation, and while the legs can't go too far straight, they can still rotate plenty, and she even has ankle pivots, and the backpack never gets in the way. She can do things like taking a sippy, fighting off enemy invaders, recreating the Jean-Claude Van Damme truck splits, and backing that ass up. The transformation is simple enough, and yeah, a lot of that is due to the shell, but at least the legs are convincing enough as the side of the car, and it packs in everything mostly well, including the junk in the quite literal trunk. And the car itself is wonderful. Not only does it roll well, but it looks like a sci-fi version of an Italian sports car, being just as curvaceous as the woman droid herself. I love the dips, the little antenna on the back, this comically long front with such angry eyes. For a shell, it packed a lot inside that backpack. You even have seats and a dashboard. It's also nice to have a Cybertronian vehicle that doesn't just look like a lump of robotic space whatever. You know, I'm like, As far as problems, I do have one big one, and it's aside from the backpack. Is it just me, or are Thrilling 30 figures really fragile? Somehow Arcee's hand snapped a bit, and Thrilling 30 Rhinox's knee plates don't want to stay on. I praise you in my first toy review, you traitor! But still, this is a really great figure overall. I give it 4 risque fan arts out of 5. It's a flawed figure, but it finally gave us Arcee while recapturing everything that makes her great. And even beyond character fan service, it's a good figure in its own right. It can also be picked up for pretty cheap online, so give it a grab. It's especially nice because after she showed up, there's been no shortage of female Transformer figures compared to before. It does raise a question though about female representation and potential sexual divides in toy marketing, which I'll talk about here in this video essay where I'll...
Control your... And I killed it. I killed her. I killed her!
Do you sometimes hear about how much smaller toys have gotten? Well, here's a 90s basic class figure, and here's our equivalent relatively recently. And I kinda like it. War for Cybertron Rattrap serves as an interesting challenge for the brothers of Has. Mecha collector quality figure that's still within budgetary range. And granted, there are other figures in this price range outside of core class, but they either don't actually transform, are disappointing one-step changers, or whatever the hell these are. But core class figures are interesting. They're about the size of classic Star Wars figures at about 3 3/4 inches, but are still highly posable and actually resemble the characters. They're so good that of course they've reportedly been cancelled. Now, this isn't confirmed by Hasbro themselves at the time of writing, but it's not looking good. And it's for a number of speculated reasons. Some say it's the choice of characters, like okay, a Bumblebee this size makes sense, but Optimus Prime? There were some quality control issues apparently sometimes. Most believably to me is Hasbro's good old-fashioned shipping issues, causing not a lot of places to get desirable figures. Good to see old habits don't die hard. Ain't that right, Speedier Cosmos and Hot Rod? And it's a shame because I think Core could have been a great entry point into Transformers collecting, as well as for kids. They're so delightfully simple but still are reasonable quality. It's astonishing to me how these things are $5 more than an authentic figure and yet have 10 times the quality. I feel like these things could have had a great home in places like CVS or Walgreens as something little Billy could see and bring home and have fun with. And Rattrap here is one of the best in the size class. And it makes sense to make Rattrap this size because, well, he's a rat, a rodent, vermin. He's a small fella even in the show. Maybe not as small as this figure, but it honestly works for him to be this scale. It's an almost perfect likeness to his cartoon self, including his big old shell-forming backpack that thankfully doesn't get in the way of articulation, though it does look like he skinned a rat and is wearing its flesh. Anyone ever seen Freddy Got Fingered? At least this somewhat disturbing backpack has a nice notch on the back to store his gun, always appreciated. And even when he's this tiny, look at the detail level we have. His colors are accurate, there's texturing for his rat body and the head sculpt, and oh my god, the head sculpt. It's like they shrank a deluxe figure. All the details are here. His eyes, his little buck teeth, his exposed brain from when he was a mentally handicapped lab experiment. Yes, that was real. It's all here with full leg, arm, shoulder, and even head rotation. You can have him pose however you'd like. You could have him in cool action poses, have him be a hardened soldier, have him doing moderately suggestive yoga, have him hide inside of a character's hat to save a dying French restaurant, and even recreate fanfictions from that side of the Transformers fandom. There's also articulation in the knee area allowing for the transformation to work, and similarly, there's a hinge for his arm, which when it comes out just looks not great. Also, apparently, this is version 2.0 of this mold, which is supposed to have the fixed joints where the arms don't come out as easily, which, yeah, that's not correct. Should also note, there's another version sold in Japan under the Beast Wars Again line with more metallic paint for the body, which is kind of annoying as this means for certain robots, they look a lot more cartoon accurate, and there's even a version of the Rhinox figure where he's not that god-awful pea green. You just have to pay $60 for him along with shipping, which, no, I'm not angry. Can't you tell? Ah, well, appreciate what you got, not what you could have had. The transformation has a bit more going on than your average shell former, which is nice, with lots of tucking and locking for the arms and legs. It's not the most involved, but I do kind of like how snugly packed everything is. It is kind of fun to unfold this rat. And it's impressive that the final result is decently convincing for something so small. An adorably emptied expression rat with lots of paneling going on, which, unfortunate, but I understand had to be done for the sake of the transformation. Also, unfortunate is the arms had to go somewhere, and as a result, Rattrap here has, realistic rat testicles. There's no articulation as well, save for the hind legs, sadly. You can kinda tilt the head out, but it exposes the head. You're not gonna get an iconic rat sniffing about pose. Definitely an area where the deluxe Thrilling 30 figure improves on. But keep in mind, that's a deluxe figure from years ago. And the fact that this is even comparable, I think, is really impressive. The fact for a budget figure we get this much transformation, this much personality, and this much value is really impressive. On setting out to make the best budget figure possible, it's a perfect 5 out of 5. But I go on an overall scale, so I'm giving him 4.5 cheese showers out of 5. I'm really sad Core is reportedly dying. It seems like stuff like this could have been a really good entry point. And there are a number of figures in this range that show the potential, and maybe I'll look at those another day. But if this is truly the end, well, at least we got something good. Somewhere out there. Oh, calm down, guys. We'll have a game of skeleton.
I'm afraid of skeleton. But whatever, what skeleton? Okay, shut up! I think one of my other favorite lines, and I've quoted a lot, but I still think the, okay, please shut up!
I'm trying to fucking transform this thing. I'm quoting it all day. It's like, oh, we're about to get to the best one. I am All-Star Nina BB-8. You are just Alexander Kotobukiya.
Why you? You're so bad you should play for Latvia.
Go fuck yourself! So these things are supposed to be made of metal, right? Let's just see about that.
Oh, you scared me, dude. Ah!
Oh boy, we got a spicy one today. We have an Optimus Prime from the Titanium series of Transformer figures. Some quick backstory. As I mentioned before, 2006 was kind of a calm before the storm in terms of Transformers and pop culture. With no show tie-in and the movie a year away, in that time we had all sorts of spin-offs and one-offs. And Titanium might be the most infamous out of all of them. Well, the second most infamous. The Titanium series started as a line of die-cast metal figures produced by Hasbro's Galoob brand. They started off with various vehicles from Star Wars and Battlestar Galactica before gradually evolving into die-cast statues of the characters. And you know what? They were pretty good for what they were. As a simple metal statue for collectors, they were well presented, nicely detailed, and were even rather affordable at the time, becoming a small success. So Hasbro sought to expand the Titanium series in a major way with their Transformers brand. Starting with simple but cute 3-inch metal statues, Hasbro got a little ambitious and wanted to make the Titanium series their first big collector-focused line. They had all sorts of promises: obscure characters, coverage of all eras of Transformers, no gimmicks after the insanity that was the Unicron trilogy, and of course the long-requested return to die-cast metal.
Die-cast construction. It's a lost art.
The hype was absolutely huge. Sure, there were other collector-grade Transformers out, like the early Masterpiece figures, but they were expensive and at the time only sold in Japan. This was not only going to be affordable, sold in more general toy stores, and was going to be a true return to form. And then they came out. Instead of the surefire success they could have been, Titanium instead became known as one of the worst lines in Transformers. I'll get into why a little later, but the toys quickly became infamous, almost immediately with their first two figures, fittingly enough, of Optimus Prime and Megatron. The Megatron figure is, already pretty infamous in Transformers circles, often being considered the worst Transformer toy ever made. Impressive in a franchise that's had health hazards, awful gimmicks, squicky content, and supreme cheators.
Huh?
He's been thoroughly beaten into the ground. Literally. But it got me wondering, what about Optimus Prime? The main hero of the franchise not named Bumblebee. Surely such an iconic character would be easy to get right. With a simple transformation and an iconic color scheme, there are way more good Optimuses than bad. Surely Titanium got him right. Why are his tits out? Okay, so this is not a traditional Optimus. This is a version from one of the Dreamwave comics where he's a Cybertronian vehicle. I'll save my rant about that for later, but regardless, it just looks odd. It's the only part of the character design overall I don't like. And I know there have been Optimuses with different chests, but they generally don't throw off the design like this guy's memories do. Like those dogs away, mate. But no amount of redesigns can save this paint scheme, which is obnoxiously bright and looks so haphazardly slapped on. Almost like someone swooshed a load of paint in their mouth and spat it on him. Though this might be the result of the die-cast metal, which, let's talk about die-cast metal in toys like this. There are a number of benefits to die-cast metal. Obviously, it's a lot more durable than plastic, and can provide a lot of weight and texture to a toy. Die-cast does feel good in the hand, including Optimus here, weighing in at a hearty 11 ounces or 312 grams for you non-free countries. As well, die-cast figures are generally very stable, able to stand pretty effectively on a lot of surfaces. Even a lot of the Masterpiece figures use die-cast in the legs and feet for this reason. However, die-cast, unlike plastic, can't be molded in a specific color, which means that it has to be painted. And the problem there is if the paint isn't carefully applied, it removes a lot of the detailing, making it look like absolute garbage, no matter how good the mold may be. And with paint, it can easily be scratched off, which just ends up looking awful, whereas scratches on plastic are a lot less visible. But the biggest problem with these figures is also the fact that the die-cast metal has been used everywhere. For quick comparison, this Masterpiece Soundwave only has die-cast in the legs. Here, legs, arms, chest, abdomen, and even his shoulders use die-cast, meaning it weighs down on the joints that are made of plastic. It's not as bad as War Within Megatron, where he had giant metal arms hanging off of pathetic ball joints the size of BB pellets. At least the legs, waists, and arms can move. a little bit before the shoulders dislodge because of the absurdly small clips meant to hold it in place. These things dislodge if you so much as look at them funny. The transformation is pretty dull. It's what I'd like to call a tummy time transformer, where you just lay it on its stomach with no real actual effort to add any sense of moving bits together or any sense of grace. Which, considering the excitement some toys garnered just from the thrill of transforming them, it can feel like quite a letdown. This one is especially bad as it leaves his arms still out in the open, and they're obviously still robot arms. Also, the sliders meant to hide away the arms don't do a good job of hiding them, as they like to slip off at will. The end result is a Cybertronian truck, which, okay. So I got into a debate about this on a Transformers Discord, but I just can't stand a lot of Cybertronian vehicles. Some of them are charming in a simple design way or in an over-the-top sci-fi way, but a lot of them just feel like either unrecognizable space whatevers, are obviously just a figure on their stomach, or just the blankest, ugliest designs ever. Optimus's truck form here is both unrecognizable and bland. It doesn't pop out or have any character whatsoever. There's no logic into how this thing looks other than, it's space, it doesn't have to have Earth logic. What an absolute mess. And it's especially bad when you remember that even in 2006, there were plenty of better options, including the before reviewed classics figures, which granted aren't perfect, but are so far and above these things it's not even funny. And they were cheaper too. And the sad thing is, later down the line, there were some actually good titanium figures released. Some of them so good you would swear they were from a different range. But it was too little too late. I'm giving Titanium Optimus 1.75 concussions out of 5. Titanium was not a bad idea on paper, and it really could have been something great. But instead it became an infamously rushed line with an inexperienced team, ruining diecast forever in Transformers outside of legs and third-party figures. But you know what? I'll give it this. It may suck as a figure, but as a weapon?
Oh!
Oh, your forger, my beloved. This is lead paint, isn't it? Ah, bootlegs. You know, I remember growing up, the only way you could easily find bootleg merchandise was to go to some shady discount shop or some flea market with a hairy gentleman peddling his wares. They were the kind of thing you had to go out of your way to find, or Grandma spots and she knows of RoboCop, but bless her eyes ain't so good, so she brings home Robert Cop. But now, thanks to the wonderful world of low standards and online direct sales marketplaces like Wish, AliExpress, or Temu, now it's all too easy to obtain knockoff merchandise. And even stores like Amazon and Walmart have opted to allow these kind of shady sellers. You can still find legitimate merch, but Grandma still has a chance of being fooled by Haha Land for Toys age 5 to 7, 5-in-1 STEM take apart trucks transformed robot birthday gift. Or in my case, my younger sister at Christmas one year with these knockoff Nendoroids. Bless her, her heart was in the right place, but unfortunately she was duped, bamboozled, Smeckledorf. They've since been taken down, but let's have a look at the original store page, because it's time to educate y'all on what goes into listing a knockoff and how to spot them. Now, to quickly explain Nendoroids, they're a series of high-quality chibi figures produced by Good Smile Company in Japan. They tackled a lot of different franchises, from anime, live-action stuff, video games, YouTubers, and even plants. They're exceptionally well made, come with a ton of different accessories, faces, and more. They are a bit pricey at $30 to $40 normally, but I think they're well worth it, especially when their competitors are U2s or Funko Pops. So these are ripoffs of the Forger family Nendoroids made to tie into Spy X Family, which I'm not going to give an explanation about. Go watch it. It's a genuinely amazing show. I'm here to talk about toys. First of all, the store page lists them as Spy Fam PVC Figure X Family rather than Spy X Family, though it has all the characters' names listed here. There's no real store description, no flavor text, no box images, no company logos, to the point the brand is labeled hilariously as generic. Whereas the official Nendoroid store page has tons of details, quality photographs, and also more reviews, while the bootlegs only feature one misled woman. On a quick little side note, the company that manufactured these bootleg Nendoroids had their company name listed, Yiwu Menglin Toys in Zhejiang, China. The company appears to specialize completely in knockoff anime figurines and merchandise. They also say their slogan is honest cooperation, mutual benefit, and win-win, with an R&D team of less than 5 people. Really shows. On first glance, these look practically identical, and you can see how my sister was fooled initially. But there are some subtle as well as obvious differences. Nendoroids are made from a soft PVC and feel soft and smooth, while still very durable, while the bootlegs are made from a much glossier form of PVC, one that, as you'd expect, feels a lot cheaper. They also don't quite connect together as well as a normal Nendoroid would. There are also a lot of design changes, such as Lloyd's inner vest being removed for a white shirt, or Yor losing her necklace, though weirdly her boots have been made to be closer to her boots in the show compared to the original toy, so bonus points I guess. Anya's hair is also a much different shape, not quite curving in as much around her face like the original figure. These imply to me that they were not stolen from the original mold and were probably more so made from pictures of the original toys, so at least they weren't stealing while they were stealing. They also got really lazy with Anya's skirt, pretty much removing any detailing, and Yor doesn't get her signature knives, not that she could have held them with the arms they gave her. Lloyd at least got to keep his pistol, though I've since lost it, but I can tell you it did not fit in his hand well at all. Also, you can forget about articulation with these things. You do get head and arm movements, but you don't get any kind of leg articulation at all, which is rather disappointing given what they're based on. Though I guess this means they can stand up a bit more on their bases, which weirdly have a pattern effect on them. Surely this detail could have been better used for, oh, I don't know, the figures! Also, the more I look at the hair, is it just me or does it look like yogurt? The way it's so goo-like, and the fact it looks more so attached to the head rather than actually part of it, something the original figure avoided thanks to adding actual hair roots. Anya's hair in particular has been made this shiny candy-like pink, rather than the more subtle washed out pink of the original's hair. Now then, there's another question that might be asked here. Are these at least worth the money? Because combined, all 3 of the originals would be in the $90 to $120 range, whereas these were only $36. On the other hand, I suppose it's kind of nice to have a full set for cheap, but these are clearly stolen designs just done badly. There are unofficial figures for things like Pokemon, Naruto, and yes, Transformers, where they use their own original sculpt, and I don't have any problems with that. They're their own things, whereas this, let's be honest, is outright theft. And for just a little bit more money, you instead could get fully sized figures of the entire Forger family, including their dog. And why would you not want to include the dog? Bond is a good boy. He'd go barf. So in the end, I'm giving these things 2.25 Rose Art crayons out of 5. On first glance, it looks the part, and you can see how most people would be fooled, but dig deeper, it's just nothing but an inferior ripoff. But am I going to be getting rid of them for being knockoffs? Nah, I love the show too much, and they were a Christmas gift. They'll stand proud in my house. Or at least until the fumes from the paint give me the black lung. Ah, my 10th video. You know what? I feel as though I should do something big for my 10th anniversary. Tell you what, I'll look at one of the absolute best figures ever made for any franchise. One of the crown jewels in my collection. Now, where did I leave that box? Deathsaurus, the iconic villain from Transformers Victory, which, you know, was the show, and it had Star Saber and Catholicism. Okay, I haven't watched it yet. It's on my list. But the important thing with him is that he had a really cool toy, an iconic piece of G1 glory that was surprisingly never released in the States. I know that Victory was a Japan exclusive, but that didn't stop the Headmasters or the first Jetfire, and he was from a different franchise. Regardless, he remains something of an iconic holy grail for Transformers collectors, often commanding high prices on eBay or Yahoo auctions. Surprisingly, the character has never been properly revisited, with only repaints of other figures stealing his identity. That's stolen valor, you bastard! I guess his size is already a big stepping stone, and on top of that, he's the lead in a pretty obscure part of the franchise unless you live in Japan. So revisiting him seemingly wasn't going to happen. But thanks to the people voting with their wallets, the tides of history change with the power of Haslab. Haslab is Hasbro's glorified pre-order page, posing as a crowdfunding page, and it's geared towards funding niche toys that Hasbro wouldn't normally fund for a number of reasons, such as size, obscurity, asking price, or sexual appeal. In all seriousness though, I think it's actually kind of a cool idea. At first when I heard about the idea, I was skeptical, like, what? Hasbro big company, why they need my money? But then when you remember what goes into funding, engineering, designing, releasing toys these size, and with actual function and aren't just glorified statues, you stop playing armchair economist, it actually makes a lot of sense. Plus, this is more, as I joked, essentially a pre-ordering service with all the creation updates and bonus tiers that come with crowdfunding, and most of the projects have been successfully funded. Not all of them were success stories. I mean, no one was going to pay $300 for that giant Cookie Monster plushie, or a big expensive tie-in to one of those crap Star Wars shows. I don't know which one. There are too many of them and they all blend together. Deathsaurus was the third Transformers campaign for Haslab. After War for Cybertron
This is Unicorn.
After War for Cybertron Unicron and Victory Saber, and was the most successful Transformers campaign up to that point, and it's easy to see why. On top of the, comparably, low price of $180 compared to a lot of the other campaigns, the page looked awesome with all sorts of fun multi-tier rewards to like more weapons and his sweet-ass throne. And like mentioned before, Deathsaurus hadn't gotten a proper revisit since the original toy from the 80s. So this was a big deal, but that's enough history. Let's open this thing up. Can we just admire this amazing box art drawn by Guido Guidi? The super contrasting colors, Deathsaurus sitting proudly on his throne. This is an art piece in and of itself. And like all great art, we must take good care of it. Let's look at the accessories before the big man himself. We got some purple explosion effects, as is mandatory for collector's figures for some reason. We also get a display bracket. We have a base and his mighty throne, which looks all red and lumpy, made of the flesh of victims this space bastard has killed. Oh, and even better, all his weapons can slip onto the back for easy storage. I absolutely love this. It's such a nice way of keeping everything so tidy, so you don't have to keep everything attached to the figure or in a plastic bag or something. Well worth getting to that third tier for. Then we got two Micromasters that came with Deathy here as a treat for making this the biggest Transformers campaign ever. And bear in mind, these weren't even hinted at until after it was funded. We had these adorably tiny figures of Boater and Peepo, and yes, that's his name, Peepo, because that's the Japanese onomatopoeia for an ambulance siren. It's also the greatest name for a Transformer ever. The accessory train continues with the Breast Force, and yes, that's their name, not Chest Force like the instructions say. Their name is Breast Force. Anyways, these little guys form Deathsaurus' chest with Eagle Breast and Tiger Breast, who not only form their own animals, but Tiger Breast can form Deathsaurus' bow and arrow, and Eagle Breast can form Deathsaurus' gun. And the final round of accessories, because hell yeah, we earned all of this, includes his big ol' scimitar for decapitations, his flail, an arrow for his bow, a big off space gun, and a shield that's used to also form his tail. By the way, just a heads up, we haven't even started the figure. God, this comes with so much, it's wonderful. And here he is, the main man himself. If he doesn't scream raw sexual appeal, I don't even know what does. This color scheme is already wonderful, with bright blues, gold highlights, and light blue plastic for his wings and joints. He's a very loud character, but still has dignity and grace. And I especially love the vac metallization on his chest and head pieces. It just adds to that pay attention to me bombast the character deserves, just like his bright red codpiece. And you can't forget his wings, which might be his defining feature. Plenty of Transformers have wings, whether they be jet wings or animal wings, but Deathy's wings are practically another weapon. These big Reaper sights are giving him a raw, powerful, sexual presence no one else has. The back is also one of the cleaner large-scale Transformers I've ever seen, with only really his head for his dragon form acting as kibble. It's also sadly the bit that kinda lets me down. It's this bright white color which is a little lacking, especially compared to the awesome vac metallized silver the original head had. Kinda feel as though they should have gone with a metallic gray, gunmetal, or white rather than this, though I suppose if you hook him to the throne, the vac metal is just begging to be scratched off. See also Ultra Jetstorm. I also love when you perform a mastectomy on him, there's a flap inside so that his guts aren't completely exposed. You can also put Eagle Breast inside along with Tiger Breast, or if you're like me, putting in a Lego Simpsons Apu inside. Though I must say the chest is probably another weak point of the figure. It's kind of a struggle to get stuff in sometimes. It's not a massive pain, but given how pricey this figure was, you kinda don't wanna mess with him too much and risk— Just kidding, they detach. But now let's get on with the articulation. Wings, head, shoulders, forearms, wrist, fingers, upper legs, knees, and ankle pivots. Dear God, you can practically pose this guy doing anything. He just naturally goes into any pose you need him to. Perfect for any stop motion shenanigans.
Boy Kissers Central.
Transformation wise, You know what? This guy's transformation is so fun and so clean, I don't want to do narration over footage. I'ma sing a song. With a purple face and a golden crest, he'll summon up monsters from his breast. He hasn't had a figure since 1989. He finally came back for the Generations toy line. Oh, he's made by Hasbro. Here comes Deathsaurus. Yeah! The transformation is nice and simple for a collector's grade figure. Everything clicks together well, everything is so well compact and snappy. I especially love how the arms are stored so effectively in the back, though I'm not a fan of the static leg tail piece. And the final result is a quite excellent giant kaiju chicken.
Mega Ultra Chicken.
While I am bummed about the head a bit, it's still so cool with a very angular, intimidating beak, piercing red eyes. And even in this form, there's plenty of articulation on the wings, head, legs, and arms. Yeah, let's talk about these toothpicks. They're just so tiny, and while yes, they were like that on the original toy, and yes, they do store away nice and cleanly, it would have been nice to have some slight beefier python. But they are still able to hold his rifle, which, come on, that's hilarious. And it's a minor complaint overall, it's still fitting for what's essentially a kaiju for Transformers, and have it be the enemy of a Gundam for Transformers. And this is where I normally ended, but I can't help but feel like there's more I could add. Because while it is an excellent figure, it is in limited supply and quite pricey on eBay. What if you didn't want to spend quite as much money? Well, it's time to bring in Deathsaurus' non-union Chinese equivalent. Now, where did I put that box? Ah! Welcome, gentlemen, to the world of Planet X's Ismenios, a third-party figure of Deathsaurus. Third-party Transformers, the wonderful result of weird, confusing copyright laws that I don't even pretend to understand. Now to clarify, these aren't knockoffs, as while third-party figures are also unlicensed, they have a different purpose. Knockoffs are made to blatantly rip off specific figures, while third-party figures are more so made with the intent of being roughly on par with the real thing, usually with their own molding, though there are some third-party reproductions of some older toys. Me personally, I highly approve of this, as long as they aren't blatantly copying official molds, which has happened, but that's beside the point. Planet X is one of the more prominent third-party figure makers, mostly taking design cues from the War for Cybertron games or the IDW comics. I'm not an expert on third-party figure makers, but as a general rule, they make very high-quality figures, roughly on par with a lot of Masterpiece Transformer figures. Certainly better than some other third-party figure makers like Band's Toys. But what's especially impressive to me about their Deathsaurus figure, they made this before the Haslab campaign. In fact, before there was even a hint of the Haslab campaign. So this is a completely original sculpt made to fit roughly in line with other Masterpiece figures, including a healthy helping of die-cast metal. I've already gone ahead and given him the upgrade kit to make him look a lot more G1 rather than his IDW design, because why would anyone want that one? IDW, more like, I don't want. Hasbro certainly didn't. Given he's more IDW inspired, some notable design changes include much more prominent gold chocolate bars on his forearms, much more prominent vents throughout, spikier shoulders, and of course, thicker thighs to take lives. Also, given he's more Masterpiece inspired, the paint scheme is more of a darker purple to fit a bit more in with the overall color scheme of those figures. Overall design is really nice. It's still clearly Deathsaurus while aiming for its own thing. It feels like it still fits in well with the G1 aesthetic too. It's also streamlined well too, and isn't a clunky mess like that awful Masterminds Deathsaurus figure. Less graceful is the back, which, yeah. While the head serving as where the wings clip in is a nice idea, it results in a pretty bulky backpack, and the arms and head just kinda dangling off like that is not pleasing to look at. And the legs for the chicken mode being so far out looks really ugly on robot mode, whereas they sit flush on Haslabs. Oh, and as far as accessories goes, you have a tiger breast and eagle breast, which are nowhere near the quality of Haslab's ones, unfortunately. Also, no flap on the door for this one. So, with no chest, there's a big empty space for storing your Penguins of Madagascar Kinder Egg figurine. You got the sword that was in the IDW comics, which is a pretty sweet blade, even if I prefer the scimitar. And you get his combo Mason laser rifle, which is just awesome, and for some reason doesn't come with the Haslab one. Oh well, it fits alright in Haslab's hand. Articulation is almost identical to Haslab's, with the only thing missing being the upper leg articulation. So overall great, and now you get finger articulation, which I'm mixed on. On the one hand, it is awesome to have him be able to give the finger at whim, but on the other hand, the problem with articulated fingers is the smaller they go, the more likely they are to ping off if you mess with them ever so slightly. Still overall a positive, but it's just from my experience. I got big hands. Oh no! He's called Ismenios, but he's still Deathsaurus! Yeah! Transformation is very similar to Haslab's, but a bit clunkier in some areas, such as with the arms. They just aren't as effective as Haslab's, with the fingers sometimes pinging off, and the back panel meant to hide the fist sometimes gets stuck inside. But I am really impressed by the leg engineering, as unlike Haslab's, which was Heart's former partially, Planet X's has the rest of the tail stored in the legs, which is really clever and feels really good to unfold. Also, on a side note, the ratchet joints in this figure. Haslab has ratchet joints and they feel good to twist and turn, but something about ratchet joints in die-cast metal just sounds oh. And is it just me? Or is this dragon mode even better than Haslab's? While the arms look silly in robot mode, there is something really nice about having much bigger arms in the dragon mode. Also, the tail is articulated, something that the Haslab figure didn't have. And it feels huge, like it feels like Deathy doubled in size with this transformation. And with the upgrade kit, you get that awesome back metal head again. So, I'm torn here. Obviously, both figures here are getting perfect 5-star sabers out of 5, but which one is better? Planet X Deathsaurus has die-cast metal and the better dragon, while Haslab comes with way more stuff and the better robot. At the moment, Planet X is cheaper, but not by a crazy amount, though that could change in the future. You know what? It doesn't matter, because we all know the real winner is people. All hail people.